Beijing Winter Olympics have finally arrived, and with it, a fresh spotlight on the complex relationship, cultural clashes, and power struggles between rival world powers, the U.S. and China. Our next guest is Erich Schwartzel, a Wall Street Journal reporter whose new book is called Red Carpet: Hollywood, China, and the Global Battle for Cultural Supremacy. He looks at the competition between the American and Chinese movie businesses and how it represents a broader clash between democratic and authoritarian values. Fascinating read. Erich, thanks so much for taking the time to be with us.
Hey, I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
How important right off the bat is the film industry to the broader fight for cultural supremacy between the U.S. and China?
I mean, I think in terms of cultural battles, it's the primary battleground. Right now, we're seeing China's film industry really taking off at a robust pace as Hollywood still struggles to emerge out of COVID. And it seems like China has viewed the movies and the broader cultural conversation as a proxy battleground for its rivalry with the U.S., not only just here in America, but in countries around the world.
You write in your book about the influence China now has on the American film industry, including through its censorship and pressure campaigns. Elaborate a little bit on that for us?
Absolutely. So every movie being made in Hollywood these days, if it's a major movie, we're talking like the Transformers films, Spider-Man, something like that, it is trying to get into China and show in Chinese theaters because there are hundreds of millions of dollars in box office grosses to be made there. However, China doesn't just let any movie in. It requires strict approval from Communist Party officials. So over time, as China's economic leverage has grown, Hollywood producers have learned what topics to avoid, what to take out of movies, and what stories to avoid altogether to ensure that access. And so really what we've seen is a culture of self-censorship take root at a number of studios that know that if they want to maintain access to the Chinese market, there are certain things that are going to be absolutely out of bounds.
Right, and the view of the West is really important. Tell me how Americans are typically portrayed in Chinese films, and would you say that differs from how Hollywood depicts us?
Absolutely. There's this irony that's emerged because as China's power in Hollywood has grown, any portrayal of a Chinese villain has been removed from any script before cameras can even start rolling. The last time we saw a Chinese villain in a Hollywood film was 2012 in a remake of Red Dawn that actually changed the villain from Chinese to North Korea before the movie hit theaters because the studio was so scared about angering Chinese officials. However, China has not extended the same courtesy to America, and especially in the past 5 years, and I would say during the Trump administration, when relations between the two countries grew more and more tense, we started to see Chinese productions that were even more critical of the U.S. We started to see Chinese productions actually start exploring things like the Korean War and other historical events where America looks like the loser compared to China's victor.
So this is one of those things, I guess, where it depends on where we're headed, how it winds up. But where do you see the U.S.-China film rivalry headed, let's say, in the next 10 years, particularly if the U.S.-China relationship continues to get colder?
Well, if the relationship gets colder, I think Hollywood's going to be in a really tough spot because the business plans have been drawn up and they are counting on access to the Chinese market that is getting more and more jeopardized by the day. But I think it really depends on where you look around the world. When I was reporting this book, I traveled to rural Kenya, where American entertainment has been piped into homes for decades. I mean, there's sort of the American soft power that defined the 20th century. But when I was there and I would walk into apartments far outside Nairobi in rural villages, I would find families watching Chinese soap operas or TV stations that had 24-hour kung fu. So I think a lot of the interest has been on China's harder investments into countries, things like infrastructure and aid moving in. But what I've been trying to show is that there is also a cultural complement to that campaign, one that's acting a little out of sight and I think presenting a real challenge to Hollywood that has had a cultural dominance for here going on a century or so.
Finally, Erich, I know no one likes to boil a book or a story you're doing for the news or anything down to like a sentence or two, but what do you hope your readers take away from this book?
Well, I think, especially over the past several years, China has remained a very opaque and often overwhelming topic for a lot of Americans to understand. And what I've tried to do by explaining U.S.-China relations using Hollywood is make it more accessible. And I saw an opportunity here to use things like Tom Cruise movies to explain the New World Order. So I'm hoping it can be about as much fun as you can have while learning a whole lot about global politics.
That's the trick. Have fun while learning about global politics. Erich, thanks so much. Really do appreciate your time. Red Carpet, Hollywood, China, and the Global Battle for Cultural Supremacy comes out on February 8th. It will be wherever books are sold.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.